Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very honored to speak with Anbang Ruan. Thank you very much for being on the channel today.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everybody. Hi, I'm Anbang. I'm from Trias. Very nice meeting you guys.
Fantastic. Now, as Anbang has explained, he is the CEO and one of the key founders of Trias. Now, Trias is leading something quite unique with respect to trust. Now, specifically, it's all about trustworthy and reliable, intelligent, autonomous systems. A mouthful indeed, but let's get even clearer. They represent a thing called Trias Politica, and more specifically, it's all about trying to reinvigorate the new, governance models with a specific one in mind, and that is all about routing trust machines via a new consensus mechanism to really set forth a new infrastructure. So obviously that's important. We want to know more about it. What is Trias exactly in a nutshell? Can you tell us, the key parts?
Yeah. So in Trias, we just want to bring trust into machines. So I think So this question has been answered quite often before because we trust machines by default.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like when we install an application, an app on our mobile phones, we just use it and we keep getting data to it. Or there are many other occasions like that. Just like we trust our PC, we trust our camera, we trust our TV. So we have looked quite a lot of trust into these computers or the computing devices. But actually, I think especially when this device has become ubiquitous, it's time for us to slow it down a bit to really ask this question: Can we trust these machines? Can we trust what? Can we just feed our data into those machines and just trust their return results?
Can I just interrupt for a moment? I want to ask you specifically why trust, though, rather than tell us what. Why do we need to, bring this idea of trusted machines into the conversation?
Oh yeah, because I think. Especially when artificial intelligence will become ubiquitous, we are relying more and more on these intelligent devices. So especially when most of the details of our life is depending on them, I think we couldn't avoid this question. We couldn't avoid this question. We couldn't avoid to actually query the trustworthiness of a machine. It comes to us. This question comes to us.
Okay, so can I just discuss this in the context of centralized mechanisms and centralized trust machines particularly? Now, Apple is one mentioned in your white paper. Let's talk about that. Why do we need to have Trias come in and do something unique and decentralized if Apple's already doing something of this nature via trusted machines?
Well, yeah, I think Apple is a very good example of a closed system or centralized system which can do well in bringing trust to people because Apple has grown too big to tell a lie, I think. Comparing it to the entire computing ecosystem, I think Apple is not big enough. So we are still using quite a lot of different other devices. But I think it's not possible to build a company 10 times like Apple. Is already the most valuable company in the world. So I think maybe we can find a way to do it in a decentralized way. We can achieve what Apple has achieved, but we can encourage an entire ecosystem, entire community to help us do that.
I see. Now, Anbang, have you ever thought about what Apple might be doing behind the scenes? Because obviously, as you mentioned, they are a very closed system, certainly not open source by design, but could they possibly be, and could they challenge exactly what you're trying to do as a decentralized trusted machine infrastructure?
Well, I think so, yes. But I think that will be a very good thing for us. If Apple has decided to challenge us, then we are big enough to get noticed. But I think from our point of view, we just try to how to say this, to light a torch to light a torch to the entire society.
I see. So you're lighting a new flame, essentially, by being decentralized, and that's your premise. But I want to move back now to your team. You are the CEO. You are leading quite a substantial team at the moment, certainly by credentials, I mean. But I want to, discuss exactly what you've done in your background. Now, I've read into you a little bit. You've got PhDs. You've got a master's in engineering. from very reputable companies. I don't mean to shill this company, and I certainly am not trying to sell you to anybody, but you are impressive in the fact that you have had, the most important thing I looked for was experience in this field, specifically with trusted cloud computing. So can you tell us very briefly about your experience and why you feel, if you do in fact, that you can really lead this particular project?
Right. So yeah. So you mentioned my study and my research, my previous research. So I can give a very brief introduction. So basically, for the last 10 years, I've been in the field we call trusted computing. So it's actually a branch of system security. So it helps us. Trusted computing actually can help us to determine what is really going on inside the piece of computing device by examining what kind of applications have been loaded inside this memory. So from my when I was in Oxford doing my PhD, so my research interest was to use this a piece of devices to help us to determine trustworthiness of the cloud computing infrastructure itself. Because I think if we can't trust clouds, or especially the public cloud, we couldn't put our private data into the cloud.
Sure.
So
now, just interrupt for a moment, because obviously for time constraints. Now, what I have noticed is that there's several different publications, not just written by you, but some of your colleagues and peers and some of your team members. Now, I want to ask you this directly. Clearly, you do have this academic standing, very much respected, no doubt, in this small sector of perhaps blockchain-related and trust-related research. But how much of your whole project is theoretical? And how much of it, right now is being tested, in more of a laboratory sense?
Wow. So I think I can proud to say that nearly 70% has been tested, and yes. So we have been we have spent so much time on this, especially so particularly before we started to look into the blockchain field. So we have already spent quite a lot of time to investigate how to root trust into the cloud. So currently, what Trias is doing is to expand this research a little bit to root trust into general purpose computing devices.
Right.
Yeah, so
I did notice that in your roadmap you did start all the way back in 2009. So can you tell us why it's taken so long from that point to now before you've really accessed the blockchain as a mechanism to really build on this trust machine system?
Well, so actually I expected this to be a little bit more longer, a little bit longer than this, because yes. So yes, and actually I've been spending quite a lot of time to do research in this field. And I didn't expect the blockchain to be such a hot topic. Yeah, so basically, if it is one for the blockchain, the hotness of the blockchain, I think we need a lot more time in this field. Yeah.
I see. Now, what I want to do is talk about some of the fundamentals of your own technology. Now, there's some key subsystems, 3 of them, in fact, I want to talk about. But before we do, can you talk about the T? Now, that stands for those who may not know, the Trusted Executable Environment. Exactly what is the T and why does it matter?
Right. So the T is actually a series of hardware extensions. So its main goal is to recall what is really happening inside a piece of computing device by using a hardware-assisted device. So this is because that software can cheat easily. For example, if a hacker has gained the root access to a piece of computer, a piece of computing device, so he or she will just replace the software to do malicious behaviors. But it could be very hard for a malicious user to hack into a piece of hardware device. Usually it requires them to get a physical access to this piece of device. So this attack cannot easily be done remotely. So by using this technology, we can substantially increase the trustworthiness of a piece of computing device.
I see. So specifically, it's about ensuring that there is an element of trust. Can we talk about that in the context of the hierarchy of layers? in it by design? Because my understanding is that you are almost a negative layer in the sense that you operate to support other very fundamental trust aspects in your design. So talk us through that. Why are you a layer 1 or layer 0, for want of a better number, numerical system? Why are you that base layer? And what does it even mean?
Yeah. Right. So I think we have to introduce a concept called the chain of trust. So for example, if you want to trust a piece of software, you have to trust the other softwares that provide service for this piece of software. So in order to trust those software, you also need to trust the other lower layer. So during the bootstrapping procedure for an operating system, so usually the first thing to trust for a software model should be the software running inside the BIOS, BIOS.
Mm-hmm.
And then the loader, and then the operating system's kernel, and then the application that runs on top of the piece of device.
Right.
So so this is where the trust computing can help us because it can stand in the very front of the bootstrapping procedure. It can measure the integrity of the BIOS, the very tiny piece of software inside the BIOS, and then this BIOS can verify the bootloader, which can also verify the kernel. So if we can actually build this chain of trust, so we can have relatively strong assurance to say that okay, the target machine is running correct code. Mm-hmm. So by putting this capability in the very front, we actually I think that we can actually root trust in the layer below an operating system. So this is what we call it.
Okay, so could you give us some examples of some operating systems that could technically use this kind of layer that you're establishing?
Well, yeah. So we can we got to introduce a concept called remote attestation. So mm-hmm. So when an operating system has got this chain of trust built, and then the other remote machine can just ask this operating system to provide a proof to say that to tell the remote party what has happened inside this piece.
I see. So essentially, using that attestation, you could have that third party onboard onto your system. Is that the idea? Is the idea that somehow you can have other operating systems function on your platform? Is that where we're going with this, or can you explain this a little bit further?
Oh yeah. So with remote attestation, we can actually allow a challenger also or a remote application to examine the integrity of the local.
I see.
Of the local.
So essentially a verifier to ensure that everything's in sync, working, the nodes are there. I want to talk to you now about node clustering as well, because my understanding is that you have created a situation where you don't need to work through all the nodes, but you can reduce it down for efficiency into just a cluster of them. Can you talk through that?
Yeah, right. So the reason why we do this is that remote attestation can be very expensive because firstly it needs direct contact between two random nodes, mm-hmm. And when we got a huge amount of a huge number of nodes, then the complexity can be very high. Right. So by using this we call it the graph algorithm, we actually build a transitive trust. It's just like when node A has attested node B, and node B has also attested node C, then we can actually build a transitive trust between node A and node C. So we don't actually need to perform attestation repeatedly among each.
I see. And that's where the efficiency comes in. That you only have to do it sort of more directly between specific nodes and not through the entire ecosystem of nodes.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Now, can we move across now to your subsystem? Now, you have three key aspects, or key elements rather. Now, my apologies if I mispronounce these. You have Leviatom. You also have Prometh, and you have MagCarta. Now, I want to just ask you if you could explain in a nutshell why you have them and what each of them represent.
Yeah. So So the reason why we use these three subsystems is that we actually enforces the separation of powers model. So the Leviatom actually represents the executive branch. The Prometh represents the legislative, and the MagCarta represents the judiciary. Yeah.
Sure. Now, that's available in your white paper, so let's go deeper. I don't want to waste this chance to talk to you about it. Now, in the Leviatom, it explains specifically it's all about, again, this T that we talked about. Specifically, there's graph algorithms, and it's that base layer. So essentially, the buzzword comes with it is executive. Can we really extrapolate this further? What's the really big thing about Leviatom that really matters?
Yeah. So before the separation of powers, for example, for the cloud infrastructure, actually, it has got all those three branches of power inside it. So currently for Leviatom, we have actually separated the two other powers away. So we only leave the executive in the Leviatom. So in this case, Leviatom is only responsible for executing what it has given. Yeah, what has been given. It could not actually tell other people or tell its user what has been done, or it also could not tell its user.
I see. So this is all about the what, in the sense that the role of this one is to execute, is to do.
Yeah. So it's actually a reduced powered cloud infrastructure.
I see. Now let's talk about the second subset as well. Now that's all about the traceability aspects, specifically related to security, and that's the Prometh. You explained before it's about the legislative aspects, meaning it's got some sort of insinuation with law, in the sense of the laws of governance. Can you talk us through more the Prometh aspect and how that works?
Yeah. So I think in the cyberspace, we also need laws. We need a way to define the property of a certain behavior. It's just like for in the cyberspace, all those behaviors are enforced by software itself. So in this case, we need a way to better define, or to define automatically or transparently all those behaviors for any single piece of software. Yes, we really need this because it's for example, when we download any application from the App Store, we actually don't know what it will do. So if we got a way to define all its behaviors, they'd be great. So
right. Well, let's talk about that now in the context of 2 points, and that is firstly formal verifications. We've seen CertiK as one example, or Certic, showing that they are focused on debugging smart contracts and thereby focusing on formal verifications. It seems that this is part of the deal with Prometh as well. And also, can we talk about smart contracts and how you're going to provide trust assurances in that domain as well?
Oh yeah, sure. So actually, Prometh tries to combine formal verification and what we call in the security field as DevSecOps, development, security, and operations. So I think that if because Prometh is targets at finding a way to define a property for the general purpose application, not for the smart contract itself. So general purpose application will be too complex to get formally verified. So in this case, our target is to trace any piece of application to its origin. It's like to its source code, and then we can use some of the automatical applications, security verifiers, to examine the behavior from its source code.
Right. So can we talk about, though, moving it back to the lay conversation, what's the fundamental benefit? Why do it this way? What does it do for the people? What's the real world connection?
Yeah. So I think the one benefit will be the so it can actually allow us to perform auditing for the entire software development process. So for example, if we got the entire life cycle for all those if we got the life cycle for all the software's development and operations procedure recorded on blockchain, then we will have a very certain assurance that this piece of software can be traced to its original source code.
Right.
I think this is one of the very important property that we can gain.
I see, and it does. It's also reiterated several times in your white paper with the term traceability. So it is sort of relevant, I suppose, in that context of auditing. Now, with MagCarta, my understanding is that again has a legal sort of flavor to it with the judiciary aspect. Talk us through that with regard to, again, the smart contracts and the token ecosystem.
Yeah, so MagCarta actually judges who does what and who gets what. So in our ecosystem, we are designing MagCarta as Trias own smart contract. So MagCarta can actually schedule all those Prometh application on top of Leviatom network. It's just like so Leviatom network can actually provide us an capability to choose trustworthy nodes, and can actually help us to determine the security properties for general purpose applications. So then now we just need the MagCarta to schedule schedule application on top of the trustworthy node and determine who determine the contributions of each parties.
I see. Now I want to ask you directly with regard to all three of them. Is it your position, Anbang, that you need these three to really set you apart from other designs? Is this really a big asset for you that you're not seeing in other theoretical and even code-based designs to lead the way in this trusted machine era?
Well, yeah, at least I've been thinking about this idea for quite a long time. Actually, my PhD thesis is about building separation of powers model for an open and trustworthy cloud infrastructure. So as I mentioned before, Trias is just an extension to my previous study.
Very interesting. So really, when we talk about the theoretical premise of this, it's been going for us quite some time. You've really started this writing and this study in 2009. So this is a very long-term project already.
Exactly. Yeah, I've been thinking about this for quite a long time. Yeah.
Interesting. Now let's talk about consensus. One of the things outlined in your white paper is that you argue that you have a very unique, almost third-generation style consensus mechanism built in. Talk us through that. What sets you apart once again at the consensus layer?
Yeah, right. So basically in Trias, we got two layers of consensus. So the first layer is about building a consensus on the trustworthiness of the voting node themselves. It's just like when we want to vote for something, we firstly will vote for the people who will vote for the ultimate target. So by laying these two different layers of consensus, it can actually help us to greatly reduce the chance of any malicious behavior when it comes to the final level of voting. So it can help us to greatly improve the efficiency.
Right. Now, in terms of specifics, though, can you tell us what the actual consensus is? Describe to us, in layman's terms, how the consensus actually functions. What's the name of the consensus mechanisms? And talk us through those terms, outlined, such as enhancements, the multi-party computation. That's so imperative at this sort of area of your design.
Well, yeah. So we got an interesting name for our consensus. It's called HCGraph. Yes. So it's a heterogeneous consensus graph. So basically, we use a graph presentation for our blockchain, for our basic ledger. So it's actually not a block. It's also not a chain. So it's actually the graph.
Right.
So yeah. So the HC actually means that each voting nodes will be heterogeneous to each other. So it's just like we will gather the nodes with different structure, different system, allow them to vote for each other's integrity. The reason why we do this is that we will greatly reduce the single point of failure. So if all the nodes are homogeneous, then any single piece, any single bug or any single failure will result in a great will greatly affect the robustness of the entire consensus.
And you, as you explained with that heterogeneous approach with regard to the graph, that harps back to some of the discussions I've had with HashGraph. So can we talk about that in that context? Because I'm aware that the gossip protocol comes up in your white paper. Are there some nuances or similarity between these two? Can you talk us through it?
Well, actually, our idea stemmed from my paper published in 2011. So I believe that it was quite long before the hash graph. So actually, I think hash graph is actually transmitting gossip about the transactions, but we are actually using this gossip to transmit the information about the trustworthiness of each node. So we only use gossip in the bottom layer of the consensus, which is to build consensus about.
I see, rather than at the very top layer with the transactions. So what is interesting is you both seem to value the same protocol. That gossip protocol seems to have value. Can you tell us why? Why did you sort of integrate the gossip into your system?
Yeah. Yes, because it's just because it can greatly reduce the network traffic, and it allows information to disseminate faster.
Right. Now I want to talk to you about something that is very direct and something that many people do want to know about, and that's the ICO and the token metrics. Now, every blockchain requires funding. There's all different ways, obviously, someone can go about trying to raise capital. The ICO is one way to do that. Are you currently planning on doing an ICO, or are you in an ICO phase at all right now?
Yeah, so we are currently closing our seed round, and we will open our private round in probably 1 month or 2, and then we are thinking about doing a crowd sale, but we haven't decided yet.
I see. So why have you just chosen to disclose and have interviews so early when so many don't do that at the seed round position?
Well, so I think it's because we have spent so much time in this project as well already. So seed round is only our founding phase, but actually regarding to the development and the design, we have already put in quite a lot of resources to that. So we think that we are quite mature to present our idea, and actually our testnet will come on pretty soon. So
right, and we will talk about that, Anbang. Don't worry, we'll get to the roadmap. But let's move now to your raise. Let's talk about your lockups. Let's talk about how you've designed your seed, because obviously you've planned that. You're in that phase now. What can you disclose?
Well, exactly. I think transparency is a key to building trust. It's just like the blockchain approach. Right. Yeah. So actually, I'm very happy to share the lockup for the seed investors. So we
appreciate that very much. So tell us, go for it.
Right. Yeah. So you'll be for 6 months. So unlocking month by month within the 6 months.
Okay. So there's going to be 5 unlocked periods.
Actually, there will be like 7 unlocking periods.
Okay.
Yeah. 7. So the first one will be the first batch will be unlocked on the day when we go listing, and then
how much will that be? Sorry, I'm sure you said before. What's the percentage that will be unlocked at the point when it arrives on exchange for those seed investors?
15%.
15. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
And from there?
And from there will be 4 15% and 2 12.5%.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, can you talk us through your reasoning? I think it's fascinating for anyone to understand the kind of conversations that must go on behind the scenes to try and design the metrics. It mustn't be an easy task. Why have you enabled the seed investor to be able to access 15% of the tokens immediately?
I think that they are great supporters to us. So and we are also very we are also very optimistic on our return. So I think like 15% will be quite enough for them to get very good return. And then we also we would like them to stay with me for a little bit longer, but not that long, because they are still investors. So I believe that because since most of our early investors, they told us that they will keep our token for a very long time. So,
sure. Now, respectfully, I mean, we've both been in this game certainly long enough to know that we aren't able to necessarily take all of that on face value. I mean, we probably have to, because the reality is that VCs are all about ensuring they make money, they make profit, and that they invest for the reason of, value, whether it be for long-term or short-term. We don't really know, because what we have to make sure of is that the company themselves best represent their quality and their technology. So no doubt what you're doing is trying to go and pick those who share the same ethos. How hard is it to go and find a VC that genuinely wants to look at the long-term of this whole industry?
Well, actually, I don't know how high it will be because we just started. But actually, from our investors, Neo Global Capital, NGC, and Cosmos, they are very, very supportive. They really putting quite a lot of effort in bringing us to the public and give us more exposure.
I respect that. I mean, obviously NGC has an immense reputation in this space, and I certainly don't mean to shield them. Obviously, I have spoken about Neo at length in the past, but they are very different. NGC are they're an entity. But the reason why I sort of push on this point is that right now we're seeing so much volatility in the market, especially right now we're seeing a significant drop in the value of many of the startups. So clearly the mindset of many of these VCs is going to be one of concern for the market, and thus again, it must be difficult to really isolate those that have the same values that you do, because you've been in this already for the long haul. You've been there since 2009 and you want to be there later. How can you possibly ensure that these VCs are going to be there with you? That's the anomaly that I always find when I look at it. So again, we can only go on the behaviors of these VCs. So have you done your DD, and have you contacted other startups? I mean, I'm being quite serious about this, because we want to know right from the outset that regardless of the brand reputation, they are actually doing the right thing. They're acting on their word, and they're holding these tokens for the value that they perceive for the long term.
Right. So yes, actually, we actually do DD by just talking to them. We evaluate very carefully whether the VCs are actually understanding what we have been doing, understanding our target. They actually some of the VCs came to us to say, "Oh, Neo has invested. We also would like to join this venture."
And that's happening right now.
We found out that.
I imagine there's quite a long. I sincerely mean this. I imagine there's quite a long list, because it seems to be that once a very respected and reputable brand of VC comes on board, that sets forth interest. But the challenging thing for you, no doubt, with your team is to work out which of those you think, again, have that long-term vision.
Exactly. Yeah, we really need to find those VCs who have the similar long-term vision as we do. So yeah.
So talk us through that. How many have been knocking on the doors since NGC and Cosmos arrived in the scene? How busy have you? How hot has the hotline been, and how many people are ringing in each day? Or who are?
The craziest day was I had 11 phone calls for one day, so they kept for 11 hours straight.
Wow. So are we talking some very big names like NGC that have been calling?
Yes, like DSVC. So I believe it's a very famous name in the field, and there are a few others. Yes,
but you can't tell me yet. So it sounds like there's deals being made. Now, on that note, can you tell us a bit about the decision you've made, whether or not you're doing a one-stop shop in the sense, or one-stop sort of system for price? Are you one set price, one for all, or are you doing what some of these other startups have done controversially and set forth negotiated amounts for different VCs?
Well, actually, for the seed rounds, we have to be fair. So there will be like just one price, and the one is lock-in position. Yeah.
Awesome. So that means that you are generally just one set amount for the seed. Let's talk about now the plan for the team. How long is the lockup for the team?
4 years.
4 years. That's a long time, Anbang. You know, that's longer than most that I do talk with. Why have you decided to do it so long?
Well, actually, I think that so we are not here just to raise money and use that because we really need my team to stay with us, to stay with me for at least 4 years, because I've been in this field for more than 10 years, and I still think that there's a long way to go.
Sure.
I think 4 years is already quite a short time for as well according to our plan.
Right.
Yeah, so
well, certainly those who concur with you with regard to your long-term vision, you know, they'll be smiling right now because it reflects the traditional model as well. Google do the same. 4 years is a pretty standard number, as you said. Now let's talk about your raise, the exact number. How much are you actually trying to raise in this seed round, and how much are you raising beyond that for your next rounds?
Oh yeah. So our plan is to raise 8,000 ETH.
8,000 ETH. Is that in total for the whole ICO?
For the seed round.
Just for the seed. Okay. So 8,000 ETH. That's not. You know, actually, I won't comment on that. That would be quite subjective. But so you know, that's the amount that it is. So let's talk about now how much you're raising in the private sale. So the next phase, the pre-sale.
So there'll be around like 22,000 ETH. Yeah. So we'll make it. We'll make it 30,000 ETH in total.
I see. And then you're not sure, as you said, yet on what you're doing for your crowd sale opportunity.
Yeah, we are still evaluating it, and we haven't decided.
Can you confirm to us though that the public at that point will have a chance to interact and, you know, partake in the utility in some way?
Yeah. So actually, we. So previously, we didn't plan. We didn't even think about a public sale. But since our launch, we got so many emails and private messages from our community. They all want to join. I think yes, maybe it's maybe we should give more. Give the community more chance because like it's feel like having a big family right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is something that I've only just started to really broach because it's becoming more and more necessary for startups to do. Are you really looking at the services of all of the strategic investors that onboard with you in the beginning, in the seed or even in the private? Are you really looking at the value add aspects of these, or are you simply allowing them because they have capital and money?
Well, we value the value they bring a lot. Yeah, we really need.
But are you demanding that of them now? Are you expecting that they will do that in return for a chance to invest?
Yes, exactly. So like for NGC and Cosmos, they are very they're very willing to put in quite a lot of resource to help us grow or actually from their words they would like to grow with us, so we are very honored to have these partners.
Right. So when will you be publishing the rest of these investors so the public can come to understand just how many you've lined up?
Oh yeah, so you'll be soon. Yeah. So
okay. Well, I'll be looking, that's for sure. Now let's talk about the roadmap. You mentioned this before. You alluded to some key aspects with test nets coming and main nets. Tell us about those key points in time and whether or not you're on track to achieve them.
Yeah. So our plan is to bring on the testnet in early Q4. So probably they will be in October, and for the mainnet, you'll be on Q2 2009, and actually we are trying really hard to make it faster. Yeah,
I see. Now, given, as we were talking about before, the volatility in the market, are you at all concerned about the kind of, you know, significant price drop, given that you are again moving into the long-term plan of a Q2 mainnet? Are you at all concerned about the kind of drop in price that we've seen right across the board, and the fear that's, you know, followed from that?
Well, I think since we are in we are in this industry, we have decided to jump into this industry. We definitely have faith in this in this industry. So,
right, but do you feel, given that you've only started the blockchain aspects months ago, not years ago, do you feel you're ready to move into the ICO?
Well, yes. Actually, we have been thinking about this grand idea to root trust into the cloud or root trust into the machines for a very, very long time. And on the other hand, we have already examined this field, the blockchain field, for half a year already. So I started from So yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's now move into your token economy. That's outlined in your white paper. There are three aspects outlined in that with regard to how you enable nodes to have choices, the active more so. So you mentioned verifiers, routers, and executors. Can you talk us through these options that you provide?
Yeah. So actually, the more I look into the three different roles for the Leviatom network, actually, I think it is maybe it's a new kind of internet. So it's an internet with an underlying trustworthy capability built in. So the very bottom layer. It is actually the trust collector, maybe you can call it this way. So we need to have every single piece of device to get to have the capability to examine its logical neighbor's integrity, and for the middle layer, we need routers. We need these routers. They are actually enforcing the gossip protocol to broadcast what is happening in one small region and to let relatively far away regions know. So it can help us to greatly synchronize the trustworthy property of nodes. Local communities. So we got the trust collector, we got the layer of routers, and then we got a layer of computing nodes. So maybe it's kind of like the three-layered internet with the lowest layer, and maybe it will be our layer -1 for the internet itself. Yeah.
Right. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you with regard to that, now I was reading in your white paper about what seems to be inferred as a continuum. And that continuum is specifically, if you can imagine an interval where you have the term decentralized at one end and you have centralization on the other. It seems that you are trying to exist somewhere in that space. You're not defining yourself as decentralized or centralized, but more so with regard to governance, you're acknowledging the value of both. Can you explain how you can possibly do that?
Yeah, so I think the fully decentralized model also has its
drawbacks.
Yes, drawbacks. Because I think the main drawback is the efficiency. So if a fully decentralized community, it's not easy to imagine that every single decision may take quite a long time. So this is why. Yeah. So by grouping the decentralized community into three branches and allow these three branches to carry different kinds of roles, and I think it can actually help us to on one hand to improve the efficiency, and on the other hand we can still break down the monarchy of a very centralized ecosystem.
Okay. Now, also outlined in your white paper, you've mentioned the term Trias Labs or Trias Labs. Can you tell us what that is? Is that some sort of separate plan to build out, more potentially dApps or dApps, or is that something else? What's the idea of it?
Oh, you mean the Trias Lab?
Yes. What specifically is that about?
Well, it's actually the name of our team. Yeah.
Okay.
So
my apologies. I just read through that and I assumed perhaps that's a bit like we see with Chain Labs, or we see Binance Labs, or we see actual groups of people doing research. So it's not like that.
Not at the moment, but actually, so Trias Lab is the name of our foundation. So we are actually thinking about. We are actually planning to build quite a lot of collaborative labs with different
I
universities.
see. So you have a very strong focus on doing something like Berkeley has done with their Berkeley lab element, and you want to build out connections, no doubt, with leading schools or leading academic institutions like Oxford. That's where you're from. Have you spoken to any of them specifically about this, a potential partnership?
Yeah, exactly. So currently we've got very a good relationship with Peking University. So for the so actually there's actually a company behind Trias, the Octa Innovation. So it is so currently all of us come from this company. So Octa Innovation already got collaborative laboratory set up with Peking University.
Yes, so I did notice that your co-founder is also from there and has worked closely with you. My understanding is in Peking, and Peking is, for those who don't know, the #1 university in China. So it's really quite a prestigious achievement what you've done already.
Oh yeah, so we have got this plan for quite a long time. So currently we are also in very a deep connection with Oxford and many other top universities.
Well, you're alluding to some discussions and communications you're having with these institutions. Can you talk us through leading companies, global companies that you're currently talking to that can actually build the utility of Trias? Let's move in the direction of enterprise now. How can you sort of indicate we're going in the right direction for application?
Oh yeah, so actually I think Trias the future representation of Trias may be trustworthy decentralized cloud infrastructure. So which can actually hold general purpose application on top of it. So actually we're currently very eagerly looking support from the top cloud providers. And
who are they? What kind of names are they? I mean, just educate us. Many people don't know the Chinese sort of space of top cloud providers, especially with regard to cloud computing. Who are they? Who are the kind of people you need to have conversations with at the top level?
Yeah, so in China, the very top cloud computing company will be Alibaba's Aliyun and Tencent.
Baidu? Is Baidu involved anyway in that? The BAT team?
Well, yeah. So we are all we have been talking to them, but not for a very long time. So
well, they are 3 of the largest companies on earth, especially Tencent and Alibaba.
Tencent and Alibaba, yes. So they're very big. And but on the other hand, we are also talking to some of the smaller cloud computing companies because we think that maybe they need us.
Right. And how is the discussions going so far with perhaps negotiation, with onboarding, with reciprocal relationships of business and enterprise? How are these discussions sort of moving ahead?
Yeah. So we are in a very good relationship with these companies, and so we actually our testnet will be launched in their environment. So you are not only the testnet for the Trias itself, you will also be a testnet for the public trusted cloud.
It's very interesting indeed. So thank you for that transparency. Are there any other partnerships you wanted to mention with regard to business?
Well, so we actually announced some very exciting official collaborations in soon. Yeah.
Soon, so you're not going to... Right, okay, well, give me a call then. Now, with media, I want to talk to you about some leading crypto objective media sources. 2 of them are CryptoBriefing and CoinCrunch. Both of them have I personally hold them with high regard for their objectivity. I've noticed, as I've been doing my own research, that there's links. I've been to LinkedIn, noticed there's a connection with CryptoBriefing there. I've also noticed that you've been talking to CoinCrunch with media release from their part. How important do you think it is to have these entities, these parties that are trying to really elicit the information from an objective standpoint? How important are they to be part of the conversation of crypto, of blockchain, and of startups generally in a decentralized framework?
Yes, I think from our point of view, we really need the endorsements. The two mentioned, they are actually very, very good in this field, and they are very strict about the evaluation standard. And we have been talking closely, and we really need us to get very strictly verified. And yes,
I see. So essentially what you're saying is that you've been talking with objective parties. Is it your position that you value objectivity, especially now as we move into, more tech-driven startups as they come on board into this very interesting and nascent space? Is that something that Trias is focused on? Is really making sure that there's true media that's really going to ask the hard questions?
Yes, we are expecting that. Yes.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk about potential other members of the crypto space, influencers themselves. Obviously, you could argue that I am one. I'm trying not to be, and trying to be a reporter more so. But how have you experienced that? Because there's a whole range, yet again, another continuum of value. You would no doubt be a recipient of several emails. What's your experience been in this domain, so people really understand what it's like for you when people start to see potential value, perceived value, as you said, we start to see from the top down VCs build interest, and then it feeds into attention among the influencers of influencer world. How has it been for you to really sift through, if you have indeed done that, to work out and decide the value of those who want to take part?
Well, yes, I think they are very important to us. So because we are a group of people coming from the academia or from the with very strong technical background. Actually, we are not very good at translating our technical language to the general public. Yes, we really need many influential.
Sure. I'm certainly appreciating that you do, because obviously this is part of a sentiment-driven system. But how do you decide on whom to talk with in the influencer world of crypto and whom not to? What's the process you go through internally?
Well, so it actually acts similar to how we choose VCs. We really need we really need to make sure that they really understand what we are doing, and really share the same vision with us, so that we can be partners.
I see. Well, thank you once again for reiterating your philosophy and also your practice. Now let's go across to a final statement, obviously for time constraints. Anbang, it's been a privilege to speak with you. You are the CEO. Are there any things you'd like to address to the community, or for the community, or of the community, with regard to anything we may have not addressed while we've been speaking?
Well, so we have been covered quite a lot. We have covered quite a lot of different fields, and so on. So have your attention, Brad, and thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. So I think if there's only one sentence to say, I think that Trias is a very long-term project. But on the other hand, we don't want it to happen in like 10 years later. So we're building it step by step, and then we try really hard to give surprise to the entire community, and we really want the community to join us and to join this very exciting venture. And yes, I believe that in the near future, when we are surrounded by the machines, and especially intelligent machines, we really need to know whether we can trust them, and that a small team like us, I don't think we have enough power at this moment to to implement in entire journey. So I think it will be valuable, at least that to light a torch, to bring them a new idea to this community. And yes,
I see. But obviously, Anbang, from a drop comes an ocean, and you are, very early in the space. So that's going to be a very important factor for you. You're doing something daring, something bold. You're certainly doing something with regard to the trusted machine aspect that you see rarely in the space. Cloud computing is a buzzword right now, but again, it will be really a test of time. Right now, you are in 2018. It's going to be an interesting process as you lead into your mainnet next year. I wish you all the very best. And for those who are not sure about Trias, I encourage you to go and do your own DD. dive deep into the white paper. It is available on the website. They stand for specifically rooting trust machines with a new consensus to mechanism or framework to really provide for a new infrastructure entirely that's decentralized by design. So once again, the CEO is in the hot seat right now talking about Trias, and that is Anbang Ruan. Thank you for your time. We look forward to updates. I'm certainly going to be looking forward to hearing more about your partners, your team, and your project disclosures as you start to let us know about enterprise relationships. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Brad. Thank you. Thank you all.
You're welcome.